Hello everyone. Welcome to our fifth and final webinar for African American Student Success Week. We are excited to have you and for you to join us. We are going to wait a couple of minutes to allow for more participants to join us. But just to let you know, all attendees are muted and we will be getting started soon. So just sit tight. Hello, everyone. Again, I want to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. We are ready to get started. I'll kick it off to our moderator for the day, Dr. Bull.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon. Welcome to the season finale, day 5 of African American Student Success Week. This week has been a transformative experience, an electric week of engagement and dialogue. This past week, to recap, you've heard audacious proposals, radical reforms, revolutionary recommendations. You saw some damning and incriminating data propelling us to take proactive, unapologetic stances on Black student success. COVID-19 is not the time to pause and water it down. In fact, it's time to step up and double down on our stance. Today is time to hear from the most salient voices of our system, our students. But first, let's hear what you have to say from the Twitter sphere and Insta world of social media. As we chatted with you, engaged online through social media, we have our interactive experience led by Professor E. Handy. E. Handy is reporting live from the streets. Professor E. Handy, talk to us. What are they saying out there?
Thank you, Dr. Bull. Yesterday's conversation was impactful and it proved to be so while we kept the conversation on Twitter. Yesterday, next slide, please, we took the opportunity to poll the students after hearing that brilliantly laid out foundation by Dr. Sean Harper on the 10 threats and experiences that students may be facing during COVID-19. And as you can see, over 62% of students said that they agree they are relating to some of these experiences and these threats that hinder their academic student success. Next slide. What we want to do is show you a few of the examples of the Twitter chat that we have. Coming from faculty, we have Dr. Aaron talking about that it's important to know that the spaces in between class time are imperative, just like the class time in curriculum. And so what Dr. Aaron is doing is she's keeping her Zoom sessions open 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after, just to keep that community space going. We also have another faculty, Henley Newfield, and they responded that we are automatically renewing Chromebooks for students returning from summer sessions. It's a no-brainer. Next slide. We also heard about how do we better connect families and parents to reinforce their involvement during this time. The great Dr. Keith Curry from Compton College, he said social media, community events, partnerships with local K through 12 districts, It's very interesting. And the way to improve the parent engagement, we have to be able to recruit these parents. Also, we heard from Dr. Ashanti, who said that we also did an equity analysis of scholarships and applications and recipients. In other words, they wanted to make sure they polled and heard the voices, not just from the students, but from everybody involved. And then we heard from Dr. Frank, where he says, you know, we have to be flexible. Flexibility is the key in order to successfully serve our Black students. We have to be able to do both asynchronous and synchronous learning in order to really effectively get to the end result for our students. Next slide. And the last one I want to share with you today is going to come at the end of the webinar. But for now, give it back to Dr. Bull.
Thank you, Professor Handy. We continue to implore and encourage you to go on the hashtag Black Student Success through your Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and continue to tweet out what we really want you to do is focus on what Dr. Bush mentioned the other day, being not being a symbolist, not being ambivalent bystanders, but being activists, being revolutionary daring. So post your commitments, post your pledges, use the hashtag Black Student Success. What are you going to do with all this knowledge that you heard this weekend? So with that being said, I want to introduce to us the executive director of the RP group, a sister, that's right, a sister who is in charge of a major research firm, a Black woman, Dr. Dala Cooper, who's a Trojan, who's going to set down the data for us before we hear from these 5 powerful students. So without further ado, Dr. Dala Cooper, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Bull. Thank you for having me. I just want to just take a few minutes today to share some positive outcomes. This is called Black Student Success. I want to share some recent research about Black student success.
Dr. Cooper, you've muted yourself.
No, I didn't, but okay. Do I need to start over? Did you hear the first part? Okay. So the first thing I want to share with you all is some recent research that we did on the Emoja program and the impact that it has on Black student success. Next slide, please. So in this study, we're trying to find out how does the Emoja program impact Black students in terms of their success, both academically and personally. And we did that by looking at academic outcomes data and also conducting focus groups with the students. Next slide, please. So the outcomes in terms first of academic outcomes is that Emoja makes a positive difference in students' first year. So they attempt and complete more units. They have much higher persistence rates to the next year, and they also have higher 1-year transfer level English completion. And when I say higher and I say more, that is in comparison to a group of African-American students at their same colleges where these Emoja programs are, but this other group of students were not part of the Emoja program. So again, comparing students who were in Emoja to students who were not in Emoja, all Black students. Next slide, please. Emoja also makes a difference in terms of longer term outcomes. The Emoja students outperform their peers on certain long-term outcomes, namely looking at, again, the transfer level English, making sure that's completed within 3 years. There was a greater proportion of these students who were able to become transfer ready within 4 years. And similarly, a greater proportion of them earned awards, i.e. degrees and certificates within 4 years of starting at the community college. Next slide, please. In terms of the personal experience, what students said was that Emoja builds this sense of community for them. It affects their motivation, their focus. They shared a lot about how much they grew personally, in addition to affirming what we found in the data about improving their academic success. And when we asked them, well, what is it about Emoja that makes that difference? It really is about the relationships with their peers, with faculty, with staff, and also having courses and coursework that is about them. It's about their history, have that culturally relevant pedagogy, and also to have that space, whether it's physical or otherwise, where they can be safe and share their experiences. So that's a very, very brief version of a very complex study that we did. More information is available if you are interested. We can definitely share that. But I want to share one more piece of data with you. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So I'm going to explain to you what we mean by this transfer tipping point and where we are with this. So next slide, please. So we did a study recently where we were really trying to focus on how many students do all of the work, so to speak. They take up the classes, they get the grades, they meet the requirements, or at least most of the requirements, but then they don't transfer. So what we found was that there was, in a 5-year period that we looked at, there were 300,000 students who met that criteria, again, of meeting all or most of their transfer requirements, but then not transferring. So when we disaggregated some of this information by race, we found a very interesting finding, which may be counterintuitive to much of what we usually see in terms of research on African American and Black students. So I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So what we found is that once students, Black students, African American students, reach certain key milestones, they become the most likely to transfer. No, I didn't stutter. I'm trying to be very clear. They go basically, a lot of us are familiar with transfer rates as they are typically calculated from freshmen or first-time students, followed over a period of years, and how many make it to transfer. But if you narrow that group down and you look at a group who has reached potentially 60 units and have met most of their requirements, they become the most likely to transfer. On the previous slide, you may have seen the number 67% of this, what we kind of call this high leverage group transfer. Well, when you disaggregate it by race, that number is 75% for African American students. So there's some kind of tipping point. And again, the purpose of this study wasn't to identify that. We are hoping to find someone who is willing to support that effort so we can nail that down to figure out what is that point? Where is that? What contributes to it to where students become the most likely to transfer? The other thing we found was that we looked at, again, breaking it down by race, they were also the least likely to stop at the gate or near that transfer gate. The problem is many African Americans don't make it to that quote unquote tipping point. And that's what we need to address, is how to get more students to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper. And that is such a timely transition. In fact, during this webinar right now, I got a message from one of my students who just got into Howard University just right now. I mean, these are just very, very important conversations that we're having. And thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Cooper, because the next candidate that we're bringing up is a doctoral candidate, Ms. Helen Young, the magnanimous Helen Young. She's the director of the HBCU partnership and is going to talk about some of these transfer institutions that we have great partnerships with. Dr. Young, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Bull. So honored to be a part of this panel today. I wanted to share with you just a little bit of information. If we could move to the next screen. Thank you so much. We wanted to share with you just some real simple information that we hope will inspire and motivate you. The first HBCU, historically Black colleges and universities, is what that acronym stands for, was actually founded in 1837, 183 years ago. So you're talking about institutions that have a rich legacy in this country. Currently, there are 105 HBCUs found in the South and along the East Coast, which includes 2-year institutions that are technical or community colleges, as well as 4-year institutions that provide bachelor's and professional levels, everything from law school to medical school. So again, rich opportunities are available to students through these institutions. In 2005, there was a report in the diverse issues of higher ed, and it found that 22 to 23% of all Black bachelor degree holders in the United States were awarded by an HBCU. So again, you're talking about the infrastructure of this country and the contributions that HBCUs have made. In addition, HBCUs award more degrees in the STEM field to Black African American students than PWIs, or what we call predominantly white serving institutions. In 2015, the first 9 HBCUs signed MOU transfer agreements with the California Community College system. Now there are 39 HBCU partners, with 2 of those schools completing the MOU process. And since 2015, we have had 165 students who have transferred to our partner schools to complete their bachelor's degrees. Students can take advantage of this transfer pathway by completing a minimum of 30 CSU UC transferable units while maintaining a GPA of a 2.5 or higher. We have partnered with the Common Black College Application online service, which allows students to apply for free with a fee waiver code that can be obtained from your California Community College counselor. So students, what's your next steps if you're interested in potentially transferring to one of these partner schools? Well, first you need to meet with your counselor, discuss your interest in one of these schools, and then make sure that you have your transcripts reviewed so that you can obtain that fee waiver code, again, allowing you to apply to up to 4 HBCUs for free. And then finally, please join our listserv. That is the way to stay informed, stay connected, stay in contact with us. And it allows you to reach out to us and us to reach out to you. So again, we hope you will be inspired by these student stories this afternoon. 3 of these panelists are HBCU transfer students. And we are sure, once you hear their stories, you will want to follow suit. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Ms. Young, for that. And I want to turn it over to Aaron to kind of, who's the HBCU Partnership Relations Coordinator, to kind of take us through these student stories. So Aaron, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I have the pleasure of kind of the moment of the hour, hearing actually from the students and the student voices. So today we'll hear from these 6 phenomenal students about their journeys from California community colleges to their prospective institutions of higher education. First, we'll hear from David Perez. David, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Perez. The community college that I went to was Victor Valley College in Victorville. I transferred in 2018 to University of California, Santa Barbara. I am a cultural and social psych major. I chose Santa Barbara. I got into 9 of the 11 colleges that I applied for, one of which was a HBCU. Actually, 2 were HBCUs. I got into Bethune-Cookman and Howard, but I have a daughter. So I stayed in California for my daughter. So I chose Santa Barbara because it got me back to the coast. They have a great psych program there on campus, and their research. They have an amazing research department, which I'm actually doing research with Dr. Woods on campus right now. The process that I went through actually was cool. With Victor Valley College. They have a program where they actually allowed us to visit different universities. We did a whole HBCU East Coast trip where we visited an amazing amount of colleges, which put us on the campus, and we got to see campus life like right up in our face. We got to talk to students that were just randomly walking through the campus in the quad. There was programs set up, and still is some programs set up at Victor Valley College that allows you to go in and get all university information, transfer information. There's a transfer service center there for the students. And I had the pleasure of working with the school for 2.5 years with people that, went to some amazing colleges, and they had so much information for me. So it was, for me, it was easy. The hardest part was choosing a college. It took me a while. It took me a couple of months to choose the college to be okay with, going to Santa Barbara, not just being a transplant. But a good way for me to not get stuck with my decisions or feel like I, have been calling it option paralysis, was just keeping the conversation open as to how I feel about transferring, how I feel about going to university, and my feelings about being a new student on a new campus with the people that I work with, some of the admin and my mentors on campus. I think one of the things that I would change about that process, or at least how I went at that process, was I think I would have spent a little bit more time on the campus of the school that I transferred to see actual, like, a good bit of student life and what programs they had to offer for students like me, being a non-traditional transfer student. I would have asked more questions. I would have tried to find out what questions to ask and what was important. More so the students there than any of the adjunct or the, faculty. But yeah, it was, I had a good bunch of people behind me through my transfer process. I would like to name them all. I know a lot of them are on this webinar now, but I have a good support group and they helped me the most. So that was it. That was how I did it. That was my experience.
Thank you, David. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Belinda Freeman.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Belinda Freeman. I went to Long Beach City College from 2014 to 2017 and transferred to Clark Atlanta University in the fall of 2017. I graduated in the spring of 2019 with my degree in mass media arts with a concentration in television production. I'm currently working at Google as an account manager. I work with our larger team to help our clients make the most of their advertising investment across search, shopping, and right now I'm currently selling YouTube ads. So initially with my transfer journey, I was honestly directionless. I knew I needed to make money, so I was working 2-3 jobs and kind of doing school part-time. I wish I had asked for support and advice earlier on, and I felt the pressure to have it all together. But what 18-year-old really does have it all together? I'll wait. Actually, I won't. I thought I wanted to go to culinary school, but that didn't work out. And after self-reflection, I knew I wanted to get paid to travel and I wanted to get paid to talk for a living. So I was focused on getting transfer credits for communication studies. I knew I was ready after going on this HBCU tour that was absolutely phenomenal. I want to shout out my LBCC family that pushed me, Dr. Freeman and Miss Arletha Brooks. They were the two anchors that really pushed me to make that short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. That tour was life-changing. I initially was worried about missing a work week in waitressing. And I'll say, like, that was the theme of my transfer journey, short-term discomfort for long-term gain. And also making choices too. I realized that all my choices were objective. Choices are objective in general. It's really about what you do with the choices that you made. So I could have went to any school, but specifically choosing Clark Atlanta, I knew that I had to make it happen. I knew my goal was to graduate with a job. After making my choice, I called my mom. I was like, this is it for me. And a switch went off after being surrounded by so many ambitious, amazing Black students. I was like, I need to get my life together. I started changing my lifestyle and waking up early because I knew, okay, when I get to school, I'm not going to have the first big classes. I started saving money because I started thinking of college more as a business first. So I knew I couldn't get my classes if I wasn't financially enrolled. So that's one thing that I definitely would impart. Think of make sure that you can make the financial commitment before choosing your university, and also thinking about the alumni network and at your end goal. Is it to get a job? Is it to move to a different part of the country? Whatever it is, make sure that's at the core of all your decisions when you're making that transfer decision. And also, like, you can't have any fun if there's no funds too. Just a quick word. So while at CAU, I founded and served as the president of the Reproductive Justice Organization. I reported for the TV station and also served as a peer health educator. I think transitioning to the South from California was a big leap, but it was definitely worthwhile. I found that my family was really my roommates and the people that I met. Before I transferred, I also prepared by going to networking events and meeting people. I knew that I wasn't going to have my inner circle in Atlanta, so I had to be comfortable with reaching out and asking for help and asking for advice. There's nothing wrong with that. Even at working at a larger company like Google, we really do crowdsource to get information, and trusting that people will lead you in the right direction and using your discernment to know what's right for you would be like the biggest thing that I would say is key to being successful in your transfer journey. And if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me afterwards.
Thank you, Belinda. Next, we'll hear from Ejon Manil.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, my name is Ejon. I went to community college at Victor Valley College, same as David Perez that spoke first. Went there from fall 2015 to spring 2018. Then I transferred to UC San Diego in fall of 2018. And I'm currently here as a fourth year student right now. Well, not here in San Diego. I'm currently at home because of quarantine, but I'm a fourth year UC San Diego student studying molecular and cell biology. So I'm heavy in STEM and science. And really I want to like start my story with like at community college, because that's where it all started for me. When I first, I wasn't so great in high school. I was just probably mediocre and focused more on sports. And then community college is where I first met my mentor that's here in this webinar, Dr. English. He helped me and guided me through a lot of my process through community college. So I just want to say thank you to him. So having that experience in community college, I knew I had to be way more outgoing and way more extroverted and just basically get myself out there. And I'm so glad I did, because it started in student government. I joined student government, and then from there, that's where I met Dr. English and sorry, I forgot what it's called when they get faculty together with students, like basically a meeting. I met Dr. English in a meeting, so it was like kind of like unexpected, but from there on we just hit it off. And then he really connected me and got me into some programs such as Aid to Men that really guided me and showed me like a whole nother world that I wasn't really too aware of. And also through Dr. English, I was able to go on a HBCU trip from Florida to Louisiana and really explore like all the HBCUs and what they had to offer. And I actually applied to Howard University because of that experience. We got to go also to Washington, D.C. and do another college tour. And so after applying to Howard University, there seemed to be like some miscommunication. I was really set on going to Howard University, but there was a miscommunication that ended up leading me to UC San Diego. I knew that would be my follow-up choice, because as far as what I want to do, I want to be a future physician. So being heavy in STEM field, I knew that UC San Diego would fit my work ethic and what I wanted to do in my future way more better than a few of the other schools I applied to. I applied to 11 schools and got into also 9 of them. And then so UC San Diego seemed like the best fit for me. And so that's why I ended up going there. And as far as like my whole research process of deciding of going into UC San Diego and avoiding option paralysis, it was really difficult, I'm not gonna lie, but there was a lot of times where I was like really confused on what school I really wanted to go to. But after like truly like deciding like what I wanted to do with my future, that's what led me to UC San Diego. I spent a lot of time in my transfer center at community college and utilized a lot of the programs such as EOPS, also just like some of the clubs that the community college had to offer. So utilizing EOPS and the transfer center were like my main success tools through community college. And so, and as David was saying, we also had, through the transfer center, we also had university tours that we were able to go on. So being able to go through the university tours and experience those universities as first person was super eye-opening for myself. So because I know like I would have probably never gotten that opportunity just on my own or through my family or something like that. I am a first generation college student, so being like everything, I'm learning everything as I'm going as of right now, and it's kind of hard to like as you're going through it, it's super hard to like think back and like, oh, like I need to remember this so I can teach this on to someone next. So I'm like, it's great that we're having this experience to just like reflect and give back and or share our experiences with other people. So, and there's not much I would have done differently. I just wish for specifically my future career goal, I waited until I wanted to go to university to actually start like basically getting more involved in the medical field, because in community college I knew absolutely nothing about the medical field. So I was just holding it off until I got to the university. But really at the community college level, there's like so much you can do and experience, and I wouldn't just hold yourself back being at the community college level, and actually get yourself out there and explore and be more outgoing at the community college level rather than waiting until your transfer. Because by then, once you get to university, you're gonna be getting hit with way much more work and way much more things to do, and then it's just slowly builds up, and then all that you had planned just goes away. So I would not wait on it. So that's all I have to say, what I could have done differently. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Clarinetta Madden.
Hi, everyone. I'm Clarinetta. I'm from Corona, California, and I attended both Palomar College and Norco College. From there, I transferred to Tuskegee University in fall of 2015. I earned my Bachelor of Science in Accounting. From there, I went to the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi, and there I earned my Master's of Accountancy with Data and Analytics. So right now I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm an audit associate with the top 4 accounting firm in the world. I enjoy every minute of what I do, but like many of you, to get started, I didn't really talk much about, going to college with my family. It wasn't something that, we talked much about or looked too much into, but I knew that regardless, I was going to do what I had to do to be successful. So out of high school, I went to community college. Everything started out great. And then as usual, life hits you. I did have to work full time. So I ended up taking a semester off for one semester. A few semesters later, I did really well in the beginning of the semester. And then it came down to finals week, and I had like really bad anxiety and didn't take any of my finals. And then not too long after that, my work transferred me from one location to 2 hours away. And that's when I had to transfer from Palomar College to Norco College. And, I say all of this just to say that, regardless of the adversities that you have in your life, like you do have to continue to push forward. I didn't let myself lose sight of my goals, which was to get my degree and to build my career. So when I finally had the opportunity to transfer, I had enough credits. I, had applied to California schools, but a professor introduced me to the HBCU transfer program. And I was the first student to go through the program. And at the time, there were only 9 participating schools. So I immediately went into decision mode. I threw all of the schools up onto a spreadsheet, and I'm looking at tuition, I'm looking at location, and, I was freaking out a little bit about making a decision that could impact, the path of the rest of my life. And my decision to attend Tuskegee University all fell on a conversation that I had with someone at the administration office, because I called all the schools, and this lady at Tuskegee was a super sweet lady. And, she gave me all the information that I needed about where to live, the best food to eat while I was there. And she also explained that Tuskegee really focused on job placement after college. And that's something that I really looked forward to. I didn't want to graduate school and not have a place to go. So I saved all that I could that summer. And because I knew that like the financial responsibility would fall on me. So August 2015 came around, and I packed up everything that I owned and moved to Alabama. Within the first week of school, I joined some organizations. The National Association of Black Accountants was one of them. And then within the very first month of school, it was the career fair. So, I'm thinking, now's my time to shine. Like, this is going to be great. We get the list of attending companies, and there are over 100 Fortune 500 companies that would be there interviewing students. So, companies from like Amazon and Apple and Procter & Gamble. So I did my first internship while at Tuskegee with the Clorox company as a data analyst. And then because I did have another summer available, I wanted to intern with a Big Four accounting firm. I talked to my advisor and she was able to pull some strings and get me an interview. So then that following summer, I had an internship with KPMG. And for that entire year, I wanted to make sure that I got the experience that I needed. So I worked for a local firm in town so that I can, kind of get my feet wet so that I didn't completely go in not knowing what was going on. And that summer, I did my internship in Boston. So yet again, I picked up everything that I owned and moved across the country. And while I was there, I was asked to apply to what's called their master program. And not only did KPMG pay for my master's degree, but I also have a 3-year contract with them now that I've graduated school. So that's really exciting. And I'm currently in my first year with KPMG. And one of my clients is one of the biggest clients in the Mid-South business unit. So that experience is essentially priceless. And I think that I've gotten here because of not just hard work, but everyone from the HBCU transfer program, all of my professors at Tuskegee who still, reach out to me and text me and ask me to make sure things are okay, and the relationships that I've built along the way. If I could do 2 things differently in my transfer process, the first thing would be to seek more financial assistance because it's out there and people will literally give you money. And I wasn't aware of that. The second thing would be to be more involved in school. I was so focused on getting my degree and making sure I got a job. And I didn't really, I didn't go to homecoming. I didn't go to any football games. I didn't do any activities on the yard. But I wouldn't change my experience for the world. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Asma Abdi.
Hey everyone, my name's Asma Abdi. I went to San Diego City College for 3 years from fall 2015 to spring 2018. I received my associates in liberal arts and sciences with the emphasis on social and behavioral sciences. During my time at City College, I was a part of the honors program and also a member, liaison, and peer mentor for the Umoja community. I applied for 4 UCs and 4 CSUs with the fee waiver that's provided. And I decided on UCSD in particular because I was accepted with the Chancellor's Associate Scholarship Program, which is a scholarship for high achieving students with financial need. I was also accepted into the PATH program, which stands for Preparing Accomplished Transfers in the Arts and Humanities. And it was a summer transition program, which I highly recommend because it gave me the opportunity to get acclimated to the campus in the summertime before the rush of fall. And I got to learn about all the resources as well as how to get around. One thing I would have done differently in preparation while in community college was to take a more variety of classes within my interests, because now I'm at a point where I'm not sure what to pursue for my master's. And I feel as though if I had taken more variety of academic courses, I would be able to hone in on my passion. Although I have a passion for reading and writing, I have many interests that I would have liked to explore career-wise, such as psychology and communications. But my passion for writing has definitely gotten me far. I got published in a textbook for a story I wrote while in community college, and it has also officially been published in an anthology called Reclaiming Our Stories, which I can share the link with you all to check it out. And that's an achievement I'm very proud of, and it wouldn't have been possible without the connections and mentors that I developed in my Umoja community, like Paul Khalid Alexander, Dr. Roberta Alexander, Dr. Erin Charlins. I'm a first generation college student, so having these mentors has been really pivotal for me. And I'm very proud of my experience being part of the Umoja community at San Diego City College. I really miss those days. And the transition to UCSD was a bit of a culture shock because my entire life, I went to diverse schools within my neighborhood, and I had to transition from that to predominantly white and Asian institution where Black students are the minority. I started at UCSD fall 2018, and I majored in literature with a minor in ethnic studies. I got in with ethnic studies, but I switched that to my minor later on. And in some of my classes, I was the only Black student or the only Muslim student. So I definitely felt imposter syndrome. And I lived on campus because I didn't have reliable transportation, and it would take like a total of 4 hours out of my day to commute on public transit. Plus, I had the funds from the scholarship. So I took advantage of having that convenience. But I definitely felt sort of isolated. And I think one way that I dealt with that is by being involved in student groups, such as the Black Student Union, the Muslim Student Association, which I was a part of. And we have a Black Resource Center on campus at UCSD. And I think finding community helps to sort of like reframe your mind, because when you see people who like you identify with doing great things, it allows you to like build professional relationships and friendships with all the programs and the events that they put on. And I feel like that really allowed me to realize that I deserve to be at this institution just as much as any of these privileged people who are there. And despite like the microaggressions I faced on a daily basis, it really made me feel like I belong by being involved in these student groups. And so I feel like that definitely helps in that regard. But one thing I would have done differently at UCSD was to take advantage of more internships and research opportunities. I did have one internship, which was a Blum Summer Field internship I did last summer, where I engaged in community-based research and a cross-border community station. I went to TJ for the first time and worked in San Ysidro and did some civic engagement. But while I was on campus, I worked as a barista at a coffee stand. And while that was great and I loved it, I wish I had engaged in more research opportunities during the school year. I think students should take advantage of ways to get paid to do professional work to help advance your academic opportunities. So I would say to take advantage of your resources and don't doubt yourself, and you can manifest whatever you put your mind to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asma. Last but not least, we have Jesus Murillo.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesus Murillo, and I'm a graduating senior at Fisk University. I originally went to the community college called College of the Sequoias, which is a community college in the Central Valley. Before I begin, I want to provide some context to you to kind of understand where I'm coming from, and hopefully this is relatable for a lot of you. I'm a first generation college student. None of my parents made it past high school, right? The county that I currently live in and grew up is consistently rated as the least educated county in the entire country, time and time again. There's really only two routes that people take for a person of color that looks like me, right? That they take upon graduating high school, and that's either, selling drugs or working in manual labor for the rest of your life. For myself, I knew that I had to do something different. I don't like to continue. I didn't want to be another statistic, right? And, being a person of color, I already understood that there was a lot of obstacles and barriers that I had to break. And in addition to that, I was living in this environment, right, that doesn't really encourage this type of behavior in terms of, advancing yourself moving forward. So when I graduated high school, I knew the best thing that I could do at the time was to go to community college. I didn't like the idea of it. There's this stigma that if you go to community colleges, then you're not really going to advance yourself. You're going to get stuck. And I want to make sure that you guys understand that that stigma is not true at all. And the thing too is, like, coming from where I come, I really wasn't fortunate financially. And so I knew that moving on to a university right after graduating from high school was not a possibility for me. And so I went to community college, and that was probably the greatest thing that I ever did for myself, is because, one, you had to be honest with yourself, right? I knew I wasn't not only financially ready for it, but I wasn't mentally ready for it either. Going to the university, you're challenged with a lot of things. You're exposed to a lot of different, and so for me, I knew I wasn't ready for that environment whatsoever. But here's the thing. I knew the environment that I was coming from, and, I wanted to be different. I wanted to make sure that I can be a representation, a proud representation for my people. I am mixed racial, I am Hispanic, but I'm also African American. And so a lot of people see that as a double negative, right? But I wanted to be that person that showed that, you know what, no matter where I come from, I can go wherever I want to. And so I worked my butt off all the way through community college. I spent 2 years at College of Sequoias. And the main thing with that, it was that I took advantage of everything that I could. I knew for so long that my color was going to be a something that was a disadvantage. So I knew that if any opportunity came that said, hey, if you're of this ethnicity, if you're of this race, if you come from this type of economic background, we have opportunities for you. We have resources. And there's hundreds of resources out for people like me, right? And so I took advantage of them as much as I could. And because of that, I ran into a lot of great mentors. One organization that I became a part of was the A2Men organization, which I learned from some of my mentors at the community college level. And because of that, they exposed me to HBCUs, right? Growing up in California, you're really not exposed to that type of environment. You're said, no, you need to go to a CSU or you need to go to a UC. And the thing is like, while that's great, there's so much more beyond California. There's so much more opportunities and resources, and it's just a vast world outside of California. So I was like, all right, fine, let me expose myself to this. Now I went to the conference the A2Men conference in LA in March I believe that was 2018 at the time. And I was going to graduate that same semester. I had already applied and got accepted to multiple UCs and CSUs, including UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, Chico, Sacramento State, Sonoma State. And my heart was set on going to Berkeley. But again, that financial part of me kept becoming very frustrating because I knew I could see those numbers, starting to calculate. And the thing too is, coming from my background, you start seeing bills in the tens of thousands of dollars, and you quite honestly, you freak out and you kind of say, you know what, no, this isn't for me. And so you kind of get you kind of lose hope in that regard. So I knew for myself that I needed to find some type of funding. But you know what, everything works out for a reason. When I went to the A2Men conference, I ran into a university called Fisk University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's an HBCU. And I talked to a few of the gentlemen there, and, I just gave them my transcript. At that time, I had worked my butt off. I had a 4.0 GPA. I had been active in multiple organizations on campus. And, within that very moment, they saw something in me that I didn't even realize I saw, and they offered me a full ride scholarship. And with that, I was able to go to Fisk University, which was one of the most tremendous opportunities in my life. And I wouldn't have been able to do that again if I didn't take the opportunity to go and be a part of these organizations on campus, right? To work your butt off. And so upon going to Fisk University, I was very, very nervous because, a California boy going to Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, you really don't think of anything. When you think of Tennessee, you think of the South, and I'm pretty sure racial images come up in your head of what the South is depicted as, right? And so going there firsthand, it was a culture shock nonetheless, but it was an opportunity that I think was necessary for myself to expose myself to. And so, again, going to Fisk University, I wanted to take advantage of every opportunity possible. And that's something that I really want to implore on all of you. Take advantage of everything that you can, no matter where it's coming from, take advantage of it. And while at Fisk, I was a part of SGA. I joined a fraternity. I did an internship at the top law firm in the entire country. I did an internship with the state legislature of Tennessee, the mayor's office of Nashville, all because of my HBCU connections, right? A lot of people have the stigma that, if you're going to an HBCU, you're not going to have nearly as many opportunities as you would going to, a UC, a CSU, or some other PWI. And that's just not the case. Going to an HBCU, especially Fisk, was something that I'm extremely grateful for because it opened me up to these opportunities that I otherwise don't believe I would have had. And so it was just an overall amazing experience. As of last week, I finished all my coursework for my bachelor's degree. So officially I'm graduating with a 4.0 in honors from Fisk University, moving on towards graduate school, which I'm going to Harvard for. And so something that I want to instill in every single one of you is the fact that you belong in any environment that you have otherwise been told you are not a part of, right? You can advance in any environment that you put yourself into. It's just a matter of really working hard and digging deep from within yourself. That anything is possible as long as you put the work in. It took me a long time to realize that, and that's something that I really wish I would have, going back on, realized is the fact that I belong in every environment that I'm put into, no matter where it's at. And it took me becoming a Rhodes finalist, graduating with 4.0 from university, and, getting a full ride scholarship offer from Harvard University for graduate school, to realize that, no matter where you come from, you belong in that environment regardless. And so that's something that I would like to instill in every single one of you. So again, I hope you enjoyed it. And, if you have any questions, my LinkedIn is right there. So please feel free to connect.
Aaron?
Thank you so much, Jesus, and all of our student panelists for sharing your stories, experiences, and words of wisdom.
I want to turn over to, this time, one of the nicest gentlemen in our system. You heard the impact that he had on our future Dr. Ijan. Well, I don't plan on getting sick, but if I do, Ijan, you're going to take care of all of us, especially here in San Diego. He's the vice president, if you go to the next slide, of West Hills Kalinga. He's also an AMEN board member. Without further ado, welcome to the floor, Mr. Herb English, to recap the resiliency of our students.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bull. I want to first and foremost say thank you, Dr. Bull and Professor Handy. I must say you have done an outstanding job this week. Also, I want to thank Dr. Cooper, Helen Young, Aaron Azu, who are the ultimate sheroes. This is a great day. This is my favorite day, Student Voices Day. Good afternoon. I would like to thank our 6 remarkable students. These students represent the endless possibilities of African-American students within the California Community College system. And the data that Dr. Cooper presented supports that. 2 of the 6 have already graduated, one with her master's degree. One is graduating this year, class of 2020, and headed to Harvard. And the other 3 are scheduled to graduate next year, class of 2021. These students exemplify resilience and tenacity. Resilience, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Tenacity, the quality or fact of being very determined, determination. Resiliency plus tenacity equals revolutionary. I believe it's safe to say that these students have benefited from Amend, Umoja, HUBU, many counselors, faculty, classified professionals, and administrators that understand the meaning of equity. Understand the meaning of equity. Many throughout the system have a problem with equity. Equity and equality are not the same thing. Evidenced by the new motto of equity for all. Equity for all. Every time I hear equity for all, I want to scream, and I begin to think of Thomas Jefferson, the University of Virginia, and those damn tiki torches. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Bull, I have breaking news. Hold on, Dr. Bull, I have breaking news.
What is it, Herb?
As you know, the extraordinary defense attorney, Dr. Bush, rested his case on April 22nd. And I have news that the jury has a verdict. The verdict is in. Yes, African-American students not guilty. The students were found not guilty. African-American students are not the problem.
That is it. I mean, we can end right there. Thank you, Mr. English, for that exonerating speech about phenomenal and resilient students. Next up, to capture these brilliant stories, but to contextualize it from an executive level, is one of the most humble presidents in our system, Dr. Miller Gilgerson, president of Laney College. Dr. Gilgerson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Bull. And, VP English, I join you in just talking about the remarkable student voices we've heard and offering my gratitude and thanks to everybody who's organized this week. I agree, to cap it off with student voices and keeping that at the center of our work is the most important thing that we do. I really want to just say that, though, it's really hard, though, that we actually have to contextualize this within, the sobering data. And the sobering data is that if 72% of students are attending California community colleges, Black students are attending California community colleges, but only 3% of them transfer within 2 years, actually. And then again, 35% only within 6 years. We have to contextualize it. But what I appreciate so much is Dr. Cooper bringing it to us real, right? Which is sharing the inspiration in the sense that if African American students get to transfer ready, they are more likely to go on and actually succeed and go on to the next level. So I agree with Brother English there, telling us the truth about the fact that the students are not the problem. It's our system and actually taking responsibility for the things that we need to do. So I really feel like, you know, we've heard it from the voices of our students. They told it to us. How do we not hear them as designers of our system to be thinking more thoughtfully, right? Why are we afraid to hear what they said? Mentors who understood their experience and supported them. Exposure was talked about over and again, right? Opportunities to be introduced to things that they would not have seen before. Trips, creating community, Umoja programs, Amend, going to conferences, getting the experiences that are not offered. And so these are things that we do not fundamentally fund in the community college budget. These are things that we find in small pockets of funding, but we have not, if we really want to make a change, done anything to do that in a systematic way that's actually answering the call. So what can we do? You know, from a CEO perspective, I'm really thinking deeply about what we can do. And I think, first of all, I want to say to all of us who are here, the educators who are online, and the students, as you think about your trajectory, don't be afraid to speak the truth. It's scary, but we have to be unafraid and unabashed about speaking the truth. And it's not just these equity of outcome conversations, it's actually really understanding the historical and contemporary context for what's going on. I'll tell you, in Oakland, if a child is born in a life expectancy of a child born in West Oakland, an African-American child born in West Oakland is going to live 70 to 70 years old. But if you're a white child born in the Oakland Hills, you're going to live to 85. And you know all the context for what makes that number. 15 years difference in a life expectancy. And we're talking about birth weight, from birth to childhood in terms of reading outcomes, and in terms of adults, in terms of how much jobs and income and the annual average income. So we have a structural system that is baked into what it is. And these students who've talked to us today have risen, and really we're talking about the resilience that they have. And so I think that we have to be thinking about who we hire, right? So one of the major pieces of what we're talking about here is, how do we give mentors and people that students can connect to and feel confident in, that they are about their support. And we have to hire more faculty who are African American, underrepresented minorities. 1 to 131 is not a ratio for which we should be proud about in this system, right? So we have more work to do in terms of thinking about where we're going and how we're moving forward. And I think ultimately we have to be allow students the space to be designers for our programs. And I'll say, you know, at Laney College, we have a Restoring Our Communities program that was born and developed by formerly incarcerated students for formerly incarcerated students. And we have seen more success in a program that actually students built themselves because they understand the lived context and experience, and they have gone on to transfer and go on to UC Berkeley and to all the four-year colleges and universities similar to students here today. And so I want to just galvanize our students to make sure that they're using their voices as well at their institutions to actually help push and change and make sure these institutions are responsive to your voice while you're there and when you go on. And lastly, I'll just say, you know, as I said before, just as we think of the baked in system that we must have to have the conversation about thinking about, and I really appreciated the Community College Equity Assessment Lab's recommendations around our funding formula, and thinking about the fact that if we really are going to do something, if we are really going to fund our values, if we're really going to make sure that these student stories are the stories of every single student, is that we add race as a metric for funding in part of the student-centered funding formula and our student equity and outcomes. So again, my gratitude to all of our student panelists, to everybody who's helped develop this, but I believe we have much more that we can do to galvanize and ensure that we have more student stories like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilgerson, for providing us the charge that we need from a systematic perspective and giving us solutions that are not sprinkled on, but rather baked in to our system. With that being said, we want to also allow the audience to understand that it's 4 o'clock. We will get to your questions, and we have a closing by Dr. Bush. So if you would allow us for 10 more minutes, we're going to conclude Student Success Week with that. So that being said, I want to turn over to my colleague, and our co-host who will help us transition to the Q&A, Ms. Katrina Linden from the campaign. Katrina, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. So we have quite a few questions, but I know we are limited on time, so I'll keep these brief. So our first question is actually from a student or individual named Antonio around the degrees with a guarantee program with HBCUs. The question is, how do programs plan to increase their reach with more HBCUs under this MOU? Are they being proactive, or are they waiting for HBCUs to reach out to Dr. Young?
Thank you so much. Combination of both things are happening. We typically attend an event in September of every year that takes place in Washington, D.C. It's actually called National HBCU Week. And that is our opportunity to, if you will, hobnob, elbow rub with the administrators at the HBCUs and hopefully to draw interest to those institutions. And then, of course, if those institutions learn about the program, I'm constantly receiving emails of institutions that are looking to join. We'll probably have an additional 2 or 3 that will join the project in the next year or so. So combination of both things happen with that. Thank you.
That's great to know. And I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists, all of our student panelists who have joined us today. Hearing directly from you all has been enlightening, and I know other students definitely appreciate hearing firsthand from other students who have been through similar processes. So I know we had a question around financial aid. Having gone to a private university, I know that's a bit different than going to UC or a CSU. If any of you could talk about your experience in financial aid. Let me find that exact question from Mr. Elliot Coney. If we have time, can the students speak more about their financial considerations and any scholarships they sought out in making the transition, and or how that affected their choice in choosing HBCU versus a CSC or UC? Cost of living, if they have an apartment, all those other things that you have to consider. And maybe if 1 or 2 of you want to share out on that one.
If it's all right, I'd like to just say something about it real quick. This is David Perez. I wasn't ready for the cost of university. I was afraid to take out loans. I was afraid to be in that type of debt. And I asked one of the professors at my community college, and he told me something that I'll never forget. He said that we're not afraid to invest in automobiles and jewelry and things like that, but we are afraid to invest in ourselves. And one of the things that happens when we invest in ourselves is at the end of it, if we're unable to pay it back, they can't take that education from us. They can't take those experiences from us. And it just totally changed the way I looked at taking out loans for college. And I was like, why wouldn't I invest in myself? I'm the biggest commodity, you know what I'm saying? I'm what matters, not what I drive, not where I live, but who I am and what I learned. And I instantly just was like, you know what? I'm okay with it now. I'm okay with taking the loans. And it is expensive, but it's worth it. It's probably the best thing I've ever spent money on. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that.
I love that. Thank you. We're going to have to take that and use it.
I'll comment as well. This is clarinetta. Tuskegee University is a private university. So, tuition was something that was huge for me. And like I said, bearing all of the burden on myself, it didn't really play a part in my decision though. I was not afraid, unlike David, to pull out loans because I knew that, maybe that's what it would take for me to be successful and to be where I wanted to be. And as, I went further in school, I realized, as you do well, all you have to do is ask for aid. And it's not similar to California, but there are, little pockets of money where if you're doing well, people are willing to help. You can apply for scholarships, you can work on the side just a little bit. So it was very doable for me. I also lived off campus. And I made it work. And I feel like if you want it bad enough, you will make it work. And it's not as bad as it sounds as you're going into it.
Anybody else?
I would just say really quickly, in thinking about going to Clark Atlanta University, which is also a private HBCU, I was factoring in how much I anticipated making and how much I was spending. So if I'm investing, I don't know, like 36,000 a year, I anticipate making hopefully double that. So that's why I was comfortable with the investment. After I got my acceptance letter, I called the financial aid office. And I was like, so what does this really mean for me? And also looking at like the time I spent in community college and how like your financial aid does run out eventually. So my senior year, I did have to take out a private loan, but at that point it was worth it for me. And the experiences that I was experiencing were definitely worth it for me. So I would definitely say, think about your investment and think about your proposed salary with the degree that you're pursuing.
Thank you. Let's see, another question. A lot of these have been answered already by your comments. So question from our webinar last week. This question is for VP English or any of the students who have transferred. What has been the difference in the experience and support from A2MEND and Umoja at the community college compared to your current institution, if you've transferred?
Ejon, you want to hop on that one?
I was gonna say, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog is barking. That's why I was hesitant to unmute myself.
So the question is around A2MEND and Umoja support at the community colleges. How have you all who have been involved in that when you're at the community college, how have you experienced a difference, if there is a difference in supports that you received when you transferred to a 4-year? Did the Umoja support continue? Did you find another group at your campus that was able to fill that void? How was that experience in transitioning?
Yeah, so this is a big one for me because I go to, for sure, PWI, predominantly white institution. There's like less than 2% black African American people there. So, and it's a heavy STEM school. So this in community college, A2MEND and Umoja was just very much there for me and very like strong for being there for me because they helped me out a lot and just not like classes, but as far as like just showing me something like more than my little community college, and also especially being a first generation college student and being someone like my family is not very much like in the education system. So having that extra support in the education to show you how things are done properly and how to go about things in a proper way was super helpful. And A2MEND, not only did it help me in my education, but also you can ask anyone in A2MEND, it's definitely like a brotherhood. It's definitely a frat. So it's like all of us have gone to, most of us have gone to Africa together, and that experience alone has connected us in like a whole entire like different level as far as like just what school can do. So sorry if that's what it did for me in community college. So going to my UC San Diego, there's not any, I do not believe there is a Umoja program, but there is a Black Student Union. So there's also an area that Black students can get together. And I do utilize that because it does build a sense of community for myself, and where being in a predominantly white school where not too many Black folks are. So I utilize those, and then A2MEND is also still here for me, and helping me with scholarships. They're definitely, A2MEND never left for sure. They're still here for me from day one, always been there. And so I can't really speak on Umoja too much because that was implemented in my community college, like towards the end when I was transferring. So I only got to share a little bit of experiences in Umoja, but that definitely, I remember during the time they were planning on implementing it and we got to go to a conference, and that was super eye-opening as well. So I hope that answered your question.
Definitely, thank you. Well, I think that's it for our Q&A. Thank you all of the students and panelists for participating today. I know as a former student, hearing from students themselves and what they've been through has been the most valuable information you can get. So I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Bull now to wrap us up.
Thank you, Katrina. And thank you, Laura, Rena, Jaylene, all the people behind the scenes to make this happen. And thank you all for participating. I want to turn it over to really one of the brainchilds, along with Dr. Keith Curry and Dr. Teresa Aldridge, for this phenomenal week that we've had, and that is Dr. Edward C. Bush. He is the founder and board member of MEND and the president of Consumers River College. Dr. Bush, the floor is yours.
I'd like to thank all of you for staying over past 4 o'clock. I appreciate your ongoing engagement. All of this week, you have heard the case. Researchers have shown you the data. The recommendations have been made, and most importantly, you have listened to the voices of our students. Now, to me, the only question that remains unanswered is this: are you ready to fight? It is obvious that this fight is not a physical one, but this fight requires the same amount of courage. We must decide that our students are worth fighting for. We must fight the instinct to put the love of our job over the love that we have for justice for our students. We must fight our complacency and interrogate all practices and policies and be willing to dismantle them, have the creativity to design new structures where all students have equitable opportunities to be successful. We must fight apathy by flexing our political muscle, by engaging, working with, and challenging policy and decision makers to adopt the recommendations highlighted over the course of the week that primarily seeks to make sure that African-American students gets their fair share of resources in their pursuit of post-secondary education. We must fight divide and conquer tactics that tries to separate us based on our titles and employee classification, and organize ourselves as equity-minded, educational, professional freedom fighters, and hold each other and our colleges accountable for the outcomes of African-American students. One of the lessons that I learned growing up in Pomona in a hood called Ghost Town is that there are certain times and certain situations that you face that you cannot get through by talking or walking away or outsmarting it. There are moments where the situation is so critical, when there is too much at stake, when the cause is so significant, and when you have an opponent that has been standing in your way who refuse to be moved. Ghost Town taught me that sometimes passive tactics just won't work. And you must make up your mind in that moment that the only way out of this situation is to fight. Over the years, we have tried a variety of other tactics, but still find that this system that was birthed out of injustice, that is still covered in the stench of racism and classism, is incapable and was never designed to meet the needs of African-American students. We have to understand that a continuation of these practices is an act of insanity. Participants, we are at the moment where the insanity must stop. I have never been more confident going into a fight as I am today because we are rolling deep. Ghost Town taught me that if you have a crew behind you that is steadfast, courageous, and to use a modern term, if they are truly about that life, it greatly increases your likelihood of winning the fight. We have had over 1,000 people who have answered the call during African American Student Success Week, and we're going to need all of you to join the fight. And I guarantee when we show up, this giant system will fall. I have my 5 smooth stones ready. How about you? Thank you.